Yeah, guys, here we are. We the Shared Podcast. We are new in the game, and thank you for watching us. 2023, we are coming with a bang, and we're gonna be touching a lot of issues that affect our society, social and economic issues. Like I said, we are the Shared Podcast, and with me here, I'm sitting next to a gentleman here called Mhlegazi, but he'll introduce himself properly. We call him Mhlegazi. Why are we here? Why are we doing this in 2023?
Mhlekazi, when you say I'm called Mhlekazi, you are putting me on the spotlight. There are people whose titles are Mhlekazi, like kings and chiefs. Where I come from, we call them Mhlekazi. In the entire village, that is the only person we refer to as Mhlekazi. We even bow down Mhlekazi. So if they are watching this podcast, Mhlekazi, and then they hear there's some Mhlekazi who's been coronated in the Shared Podcast somewhere.
So it's sort of an honor.
It's an honor, Mhlekazi, yeah. So it's an honor. Yes, Mhlekazi, my name is Nyani Socheko, and I'm honored to be part of this podcast. I like the fact that we are saying we are new, number one. Number two, it's not that we have got any specific intelligence to offer, Mhlekazi. Sifana nabantu aba babukele, but what we are hoping for is that at the very least, our discussion will shine the light on a specific topic so that whoever is watching, this is the direction.
No, fantastic. I think before we go ahead of ourselves, we must be mindful to introduce our crew here in the studio. We've got gentlemen, two Bonganis actually, behind the cameras, guys who are doing the magic. So the final product that you'll see, it's thanks to two Bonganis that are behind the scenes, that are make sure that the Shared Podcast is going to be a success. It's going to be lit as the AMA 2000 they
as they would say.
Yeah, but can you explain why the Sheds? The Shared Podcast. How did you come up with the name?
The Shared Podcast. Remember this when we came up with this idea, it was during a dark moment. Load shedding.
Load shedding.
Like we're just sitting and now I remember very well, and we're saying, hey, singenza ntoni, and it just, it's one of those things that vele ithi qi. So it's like, what can we do? And we think about, what, we need to talk about something.
Not true.
South Africa is a country where a lot of things are happening. A country where there's just so much. So in that darkest hour, we sort of said, what, let's shine the light on all issues that affect us as the citizens, as the people of this country. So like, okay, let's come up with a podcast. Let's have a discussion. Let's talk about issues. Let's contribute to the broader idea of building the country, essentially, because the issues we're talking about are actually there to say, what, let's Nansindo. So the Shared Podcast was saying, okay, let's have a podcast which will shine the light on all issues that are affecting the people. And they'll say, okay, what are we calling it? Okay, let's call it the Sheds. Okay, the Sheds, which is taken from shedding the light. So when you shed the light on something, you're basically highlighting it and providing more context, more detail, more information about it. So when you're saying the Sheds Podcast, we want to shed the light in Mhlekazi. So that's what came about Mhlekazi.
So I like the fact that it's taking the spin-off from what is supposed to be the darkness, what the term in South Africa that we're accustomed to now, load shedding. But it's putting a spin to say you're shedding light. It's a positive message,
Yes, it's moving from the darkest moment to say the darkest hour can be inspirational.
Can produce something
when
positive,
you are in the dark, when you are disadvantaged, when you are in the toughest of the moments, you don't have to die there, Mhlekazi. You could have chosen to say it's load shedding, it's the darkest moment, let's just sit and be in the dark. But the most shining part of it, Mhlekazi, came about, and we're hoping that it's going to contribute to the broader, discussion of advancing and moving the country and all of that. So load shedding gave us the light in a way.
Fantastic. So the Shared Podcast is here to stay. It's going to be shedding light to all social issues. So today, Mhlekazi, we're going to be discussing a very, 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 very topic that is close to your heart, I believe, and close to so many hearts of our citizens in South Africa. It affects all of us, parents, it affects the nation because, it's a very, very significant topic. And the topic is the cost of education, primarily the basic education, That's what we're going to be talking about today. And we welcome our viewers to comment, to like, and really to share with us what you think about the topic, the cost of education. So as an intro, we know that any society to prosper, they need a good quality education, and this ties in with our economy, because we need to produce doctors, we need to produce engineers, artisans, teachers, you name it, for us to be able to prosper as a country, and it starts with education. Otherwise, you won't be able to prosper as a country, you won't be able to grow your economy. So here's the topic that we're having today, and January as it is, we know that parents are going to be panicking, looking for the good schools for their children. So as a starting point, why do you think education matters in our country?
Because you're saying the role of education in our country.
Yes.
And I want to take it a step further, and say the role of education in the world, the role of education on humankind. I think as human beings, we've got to be educated. And education, whether we like it or not, even if we can quit school, even if we can choose not to go to school, education is very important. And it's for this reason that the cost of it becomes the most important thing. It's for this reason that abantu abaninzi find themselves going to great lengths, and I'm sure we will touch on why people go as far as getting a money needs spent to education. It's because without education, your life does not move favorably. It still moves, but there are contracts, you buy things. Even if if you don't have education, if you don't have a good grasp and understanding of life in general, you won't get as much as you're supposed to get. You'll be robbed of your money. You can be given, let me make it simple, if you don't have education, if you go to shop, something costs 4 rands, and then you give the person 5 rand. If education is not important, when the person don't give you change, you won't ask for it. You won't say, because you don't know that you're supposed to get change. So that's the importance of education in our lives, and its role in class. It shapes us, it makes us the people we are today. When we came here, we bought petrol, we caught a taxi. It was a financial exchange.
It's based on education.
Yes,
your knowledge of knowing the world, knowing what cost what is.
The fact that I know what's in this coffin, it's because of education. Because I know that there's a measure of some sort, and you get that from being educated. So it starts. It's a knowledge base. It's what gives us a good start, a sort of a head start in life in general. It says this is who we are. This is what we're doing. So when you are properly and sufficiently educated, already we have an edge in life over many other people. Educated people get to be in charge of a lot of things. I mean, if you have money, you go to a lawyer, it's an educated person. You go to an accountant if you have a business, educated person. You go to a doctor if you're sick. So you always need an educated person, and an educated person will always be listened to. If you're educated, I will listen to. Hey, bafundile aba. Masibamamela babathini. If ufundanga mhlakazi abantu bakujonga bathi wena.
Not true.
So that's the role, that's the importance.
Okay. And then let's talk about how that the role of education links to our economy, links to our country having to produce people who will benefit our economy. I mean, being doctors and engineers, you name it. And all this starts from education. And the poverty that we have in a country, we've got one of the highest poverty, unequal society in our country. And that putting the role of education, how would it manage to make sure that we reduce this triple challenge that we have?
Poverty is one of, it's the worst thing for, if there's one thing that for any country, for any society, for any segment should be declared criminal is poverty. So if we have parents and a child who subscribe to a particular religion, particular system of life or everything, that should, there be poor people. What should be criminal? If you are in charge of a certain segment of society, if that society is poor, then it should be criminal. And that is where education comes in. Lack of education leads to poverty. Because this is why it leads to poverty. Once you are not schooled, once you are not educated, you won't find a job.
You don't have a skill.
You don't have a skill. So wherever you're looking for a job, they are the first thing they ask for. Before this is the worst thing, because before they even speak to you, before they even hear your story, before they even find out whether or not you're a good person as a human being, they want to know what you have academically Do you have matric? Do you have standard 8? Do you have a diploma? Do you have a certificate? Do you have a degree? Do you have masters? Before you even come. And remember, that certificate is not going to be doing the job. You will be doing the job. You will be knocking in. You'll be coming in. But because education, they say, what do you have? So, okay, standard 10 up, metric, okay.
So already your value is judged based on the knowledge that you have, education.
Actually, you're correct. You can say education is a value for humankind, without which you don't have a value. You go and look for a job, they say, what do you have? You can do whatever. They can train you. You could probably become the best ever. But because you don't have an education, so it must be written down somewhere. Remember, there's informal education that does not get paid for, which you would be taught at home by your parents, which gives you, knowledge about life. So it's supposed to help. But the education we're talking about is the academic one, the one that produces a certificate. The formal one, the one that we then ended up paying for. You go to school, and then when you look for a job, they say bring your certificate. So that's why it's important. So poverty is linked to it. Being rich is linked to it. Because look at it, even if you are uneducated, like uneducated as in academically uneducated, as soon as you have access to money, education creeps in class. It forces its way into it. How many artists have been robbed of their money because of poor education, not understanding contracts? So education, we have poverty because of education or lack thereof it. We have rich people because of it. The entire thing, politicians, musicians, everyone who contributes to life. Soccer players, you've seen them amassing wealth. Uneducated soccer players have all the money. 5 years down the line, they don't have the money. That's what education also teaches you. It helps you understand how to relate with money. At a later stage in your life, you start from Nesar, from Crèche. You go through all those things. And then one day later in your life, then education comes in. Okay, now let's do this. So it links to poverty. It links to all of these things. And that is why parents like you and I then find themselves having to pay, having to fork out a lot of money because they're trying to choose good schools. And we must talk about why we don't have good schools. Where does that come from? Why are we finding ourselves paying so much money? That's where it begins.
In fact, that's my next point. It's like you read my mind, that to say, then because we have now established that education is a necessity. It's a building block for society, for every child. You need education. Now we need to talk on the technicalities now. Putting a brick to it now. How much should the parents be spending on quality education? Because as much as we know that education money can do, but it costs money. So this is the issue of to say how much should you be investing as a parent.
It's bad. Nkosana, as you're asking me that question, I'm boiling because this is
an emotional topic for you.
Very emotional. It's something you cannot avoid. Very, 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 very emotional. I'm boiling because I'll show you a personal story. I used to be chased out of school. Like, be called among kids.
In primary,
In high school. In primary it was better. I was still at home in Transkei. We're probably paying R2 per annum. Because I used to be chased out. And you know what would be the reason? The reason would be my father would not have had money at that point to pay for my fees. So I'll go to Tata and say, Tata, but go to school and you don't go. I had school fees, but school fees. Then you must start. Can you imagine the emotional, traumatic experience that you go through? So your parents must now look around and it's not because when they're boom, it's because it's not them. So education is a ton issue, but this is where the problem starts. Why do parents in a country where we pay tax for everything? From your salary, you get taxed. When you buy food, you get taxed, or anything that you want to get taxed. Your car, you get taxed through it. Even when you buy petrol, you renew disc. So we're taxed left, right, and center. Why in a country where we are taxed up to 38% or more, you must still pay for education? That is where it becomes emotional. You look at your pay slip, you see at the portion of tax, you say, with so much money, if Bangandi Nika and go and pay for my child's school fees, if Bangandi Nika and buy him back I would have invested it, and this is where the problem is. While it costs a lot, like you're talking about the cost, for private education, you've got parents who are paying 10,000 a month, 8,000 a month, 6,000. This is just school fees, not textbooks, not uniform, not money for excursions, not money for golf t-shirt, not money to take the child to school, not money to buy an iPad, just school fees where you pay class. So that's why it becomes a problem. Public school, obviously there are fee-paying schools, there are no fee-paying schools, but this is where it becomes a problem. We pay for education because we pay for what we perceive to be quality education. And quality education starts with simple things, Mhlekazi. The outlook of the school as you enter, Mhlekazi, the pavement, the environment, the libraries, the computers, the air condition, the number of children in a class, a lot of things. As some schools, as you enter, the gate opens, a boom gate, parents get access cards, Mhlekazi, when you drop your child off. It starts there. So if you go to a school, there is no running water. There is no, meaning the cost of education is linked to infrastructure. Sometimes we say we're paying for good education. We are actually paying for infrastructure. You are paying for, because after all the payment, after all the money has been paid for your child to go to school, you get them, and then you compare a child who goes to a school where there is 7,000 rand school fees per month and a child who goes to a school where there is no cost at all. This is what the problem is. The one who pays 7,000, they are 20 in a classroom. The one who does not pay, they are 100 in a classroom. So when they are 20, whoever experiences challenges will have individual attention by the teacher.
So already there's no, there's inequality there. Let's talk about that, inequality,
It's crazy. Yeah. You see, what inequality will do, it's the worst thing. Because now, when you emanate from a point of departure, of inequality, you are doomed forever, Mhlekazi.
Sure.
Because what inequality does, it's not a matter of being unequal at school or unequal at home or unequal at work. It follows you wherever you go. You are given a computer, you have no understanding of the computer, you will be incompetent at work. You can't do your job. Remember, Mhlekazi, these computer programs, they've got your standard Microsoft packages, your Excel, your Access, your PowerPoint, your Word, your everything. This is what inequality does. You get to work, let's say you finally manage to graduate or something, if you ever get there. Now you are at work, you must do a PowerPoint presentation to tell your story about your department, about what you are going to do, about your contribution to this company that is going to pay you. The guy who's had access to PowerPoint forever, since primary school.
Yeah.
Yes, they know what to do. Where Mhlekazi, you can't even create a slideshow. You can't even start a slideshow so that your story is complete in your head. But they run on your head. You can't chop your head and say, here is my story. Or you can't plug a memory stick and download from your head. You must show them. That's when inequality comes. The guy who is probably, because what education does, the ones who get good education, which has been paid for a lot of money, are always coming from well-off families. And then the ones who got poor education are coming from poorer backgrounds. Yeah. So what's going to happen? You need that money more because you're of your poor background, but your poor background gave you poor education. The guy who does not need the money so much will still get the money, because when it comes to promotion time, the one who's always ahead, as a result of having known, your company may take you to courses to understand basic packages, understanding the computer. It won't be enough to take you anywhere, Mhlekazi. This fellow who's had it all throughout their lives,
they're already ahead of you.
They are ahead, Mhlekazi. Now uqashwa kunye uzakuphatha aphinda akuphathe futhi aphathe nophethe wena aphathe nophethe ophethe wena, because lo muntu has had a good start. That is why failure to provide good education is failure to make a positive and meaningful contribution to this life. Therefore, Mhlekazi, any country across the entire globe should be worried about education. Should be, anybody who's in charge of any particular system should say, at the very least, if we want a good country tomorrow, 20 years from now, 100 years from now, consider good education. Because with good education, remember, there is working to just get the job done. There is working to make an impact and to come up with new things. Without good education, even the new things that are naturally revealed to you by God, by ancestors, you can't walk into a company and say, hey, my father said this. You must demonstrate it. If you get given a new concept of a brilliant car that has never existed in the entire world. You need education to show that concept, because you must draw it, you must name the parts, you must speak a language that will be understood. Without good education,
able to write. And
yes, you must be able to write and say, this is the concept, this is what this is all about. If you can't do that because of poor education, you are doomed. So that's what it does in terms of inequality. You are unequal for the rest of your life unless some miracle happen, and you happen to find a way of making it through difficulties. Wow. So the issue of inequality and education, good education, is a problem. And the fact that we don't have good education, the fact that we must sit and talk about not having good education, that on its own is a big problem.
Yeah, wow, that's a food for thought, eh? I wanted us to touch on the issue of public schools versus private schools. And for a normal and average single parent, single mother, single father, ugogo, umntwana, and all that, and they're not earning much, they're earning, minimum wage, but they want to invest in education of their children, What should they be looking at, private versus, public schools? I mean, we know of some of the good schools that are public schools, but already, to get into them, it's limited space, So what should a parent be thinking right now? Young parents, we've got a lot of young parents, who want to get their children, into a good education system. They want to give them a good footing, like you said. You want to invest today for years to come into your child. What should you be looking at?
Because the problem that this is and this is something that there is nobody out there throughout the entire country, throughout the world, who's not affected by this. Because where I stay, there's a good public school. Because in that school, the primary school I'm talking about, the former African school, which is now multiracial because of democracy, I've been rejected them twice, 2 consecutive years. The reason for my rejection is because the school is oversubscribed, they say. So, because I always want to get...
And this is your closest, so to them, this is your closest...
900 meters from my house. That's how close it is.
So your son can literally bike to school.
Bike to school, walk to school. I can even go to school, walk with him, which is very healthy, by the way. 900 meters away, it's the closest and the only public school. That's not a problem. Now, rejected them, it's oversubscribed. So the other time, I insisted on seeing the list. Me being me, when you are previously and currently disadvantaged, you always want proof when people say no, which I think is a good thing, so that you understand the bigger context. And this helped me. So I get there. I say, but why? Then the teacher explains, we've got about 4, it was grade 3, the first time I was rejected. And then we've got 4 of them. So this was 2021, and my child was going to be doing grade 3 in 2022. So I said, but why? I said, okay, we've got 4 grade 4s, grade 3s. And then each of which will be fed by the current, which is in 2021, by the current grade 2s, who must all come in. In each of these classes, according to our ratio, we're supposed to have around 30, 35 at the most in each class. Over and above that, she shows me a waiting list. I was number 79 on the waiting list. Now, should in each of the 42 grades who are overly subscribed from 35, which is supposed to be the maximum, should one parent decide for some reason, and some then kule waiting list year 79, number 79 for my child, bangamtata oy1. So on such basis, there's nothing they can do but to reject me. The story goes further. The school grounds, because I make another point, trying to make a point, I'm saying, but why don't you just then have 10 grade 3s, one so that you can take everyone within the vicinity? They say, no, we don't have sufficient grounds on the school. Again, the issue of land comes to question, affecting the school. And when you look at The only space that's there is the rugby field, which is good for sport, for any school, is the soccer field, is the, those combined courts of netball, tennis, and all of that, combi courts, I'm sure you remember combi courts. Yeah. So that's all, and then it's the parking. The story ends there. So, what pushes me then to private education is not because I think I have money.
Yeah.
In fact, I could do a lot with that money. There's a lot that must be on standstill for the duration of my child's school-going period, which is not just 12 years. After 12 years of your basic education, then it's university. Mind you, when you pay for school fees, chances are you won't qualify for any financial assistance, NSFAS or anything, unless your child is bright enough to get bursary. So, the choice between public and private, for many parents, it's not that they are trying to be fancy or to sound better or to appear better than the others. It's systematic. It's deeply built on the inefficiencies of our country as a whole. Because if there was another school of the same quality, of the same size, of the same stature, then my child would go there. And I'm not the only one. Basically, all 79 of us were in the waiting list. We basically rejected. That is where the problem is. So
it's the system, and here's the schools that you like, which is a good public school. You want to take your child there, but you can't. You are forced because you are 79, and there's no way that you can get your child in.
None whatsoever.
You're forced to look elsewhere for education.
And the moms were working. So I'm supposed to be at work from a specific amount of time, a specific hour to another hour. And if there's a lot of work to be done, I'm supposed to push further. And then after that, I go to different things, social things. So you must have a situation where your kid can go to school on their own and come back. Then the story did not end there. It became the worst. I then had to take the child to a school that I had to eventually choose. Now there was a transport involved. Headache of the worst order. Because now the driver is late. Some point I had to turn back going to work to go and fetch the kid because this guy, imoto yake had broken down. So I couldn't stand the situation of umntana eskoleni. Must go back. Yothatha umntana ndimse eskoleni. Ngokwam. One day the car came back smelling of petrol. What happened? No, I had bought petrol because I ran out of petrol. Then I put the bottle of the petrol just behind the children. So they must have while playing. So these are the things, and remember, this is all just so. When I say education is life, so public or private, you are forced by the situation, by the system itself. So parents, I feel they don't. Yes, there are those who are moneyed, but even the moneyed ones, if we had good, well looked after and prioritized public schooling system, where in every community of about, where I stay, was checking during elections. There were about 22,000 registered voters. So you can think that there are 50,000 people in that area, meaning in that ward. You have a situation when in a ward there's one school which is supposed to look after 100,000 people. 100,000 families.
There's no way.
Each family can have 2 children, 4 children, or even 500,000. How? If you look at the population in any environment versus the systems that must feed them, and I hope one day we'll talk about health, talk about all this, but just education. How many public schools? It just makes sense that these schools are there. So what this does, it makes private schooling system thrive. And it's thriving, it's doing well. When you walk into those private schools, all you see is plush. You see well paved, they've got cleaners, they've got gardeners, they've got security, they've got pavement, they've got flowers, they've got all the things because that's what we're paying for. So when I sit here, I think that I'm paying for a private kid for my school. Yes, partly is that, but a lot of that money goes towards maintaining that school. And that's what I'm paying for. And that's what is not happening in government.
Let's talk about randomly the cost that is involved in having taken your child to a private school. I mean, you've spoken about over and above just the general school fees, involves school uniforms and stationery, transport as well, the general cost. How much can you, in average, can it cost?
A lot. If you're taking your child to a private school, depending on where your child is going, look at it this way. Let's say you've got your school fees, let's say it's 6,000 rands per month, your school fees. That must be paid by the 1st of January. you must pay that. Your stationery, a stationery for grade 3, grade 4 can be around 1,200, 1,300. This stationery excludes textbook for a grade 4 child. Textbooks in total can be around 1,300 as well. So it's 6,000 for the school fees, which is monthly for 12 months. It's 1.2 for stationery, which excludes textbooks. It's 1.3 for textbooks. It's uniform, which might be around 2.4, 2.5.
Which you have to buy from the school supply.
You buy from the school supply, not some random guy you know. The school will tell you where to buy this. They will point a shop who probably has won a tender. And people who are in charge of that school will tell you that they are against the tendering system, yet they do that. That's that. And then there is random excursions, outings, taking children. You pay for those. So in 1 month, in January, you are likely going to part ways with 15,000. And maybe about 3,000 or 5,000 of the 15 is not monthly. So after you've part ways with 15,000 just in January, then you have, let's say you have 6,000 for the school fees. Then transport is also monthly. Because where I took my child, where distance was about 4 kilometers or so, transport was like 2,000. So I could negotiated, ended up with 1.5. 2 months down the line, the guy said, no, man, this 1.5 is not cutting it. I want 2,000. So
it's not even charging based on the distance.
No,
it's just charging randomly.
And you pay transfer for 12 months so that you don't pay during holidays. You pay for full 12 months. So that's what a parent, and the people themselves who are paying this kind of money are people who could use the money to build a home, to renovate a home, to extend a home. And we're migrant people because we stay in Joburg, we are from the Eastern Cape, we are from Kiani, we are from wherever. So those are the costs that are involved. Then you must pay that. Now look at this, you are paying for the education of your child. You will pay this money. By the way, it's incremental each year. So if you are paying 6,000 this year, it's not 6,000 the following year. So there are annual increases. I hope the education
even
quality increases as well. Grades as well. And I don't understand. And you started a NESAR, by the way, where you were paying 3.5 a month and all of that. So it goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. Reach grade 12. You think you will be resting. You are not resting. After grade 12, if you're paying the school fees of 6,000, you are obviously above the threshold when it comes to NSFAS and government assistance through all those things.
So you become a missing middle now, parent.
Missing middle. You go to university. University wants 20,000 for registration. So your story does not end. It goes in class for 4 years. So over above the 12 years, you have another 4 years just for a child to obtain their first degree. So 12, 13, 14, 12, 11, 12, 13, 14, class 15. So 15 years, you are paying. For 15 years. Basically, if you are not well off, like me, if you are poor like me, your life is on a standstill for 15 years. Standstill. 15 years. Then after 15 years, you are probably approaching your pension now.
Now you have to retire now.
Hence, because you see people buying their first PM when they are 16, because the guy has been dreaming of driving a BMW, a Mercedes-Benz forever. You can't afford it. So when you are 60, you're like, let me buy my BMW. This is what it does. So the life we are supposed to live, which includes building a home for this child, doing all the other things that are important. Because over above all of that, you need a home, a warm home, a well-looked after home, a place of comfort for your children, which is what you are supposed as a parent to provide to your kids. So this thing of expensive and the cost of education for our children is a serious issue that needs serious attention, real attention, meaningful attention from parents out there. It's a bad, and I doubt, even our viewers, people who are following the Sheds, I doubt people who are following the Sheds podcast, there is a single person who is watching who is not affected by this. Nobody can ever come and say, education doesn't affect me. There is no way. As soon as you are born in class, it affects you. Whether you have a child or you don't have a child or what, it does affect you directly. It's very bad in class.
Well, folks, that was the first ever podcast, the Shared podcast, tackling the issue of the education, the importance of education in our country. So this will be the first one, and we hope that you enjoy this podcast. So don't forget to like, to comment on the section, and subscribe to the Shared podcast. And this was the first part of the conversation. The second part is coming. So do follow us on the socials. We'll be there.